They trusted the system to protect the innocent. They believed the courtroom was a place where truth mattered. But one man learned the hard way that justice can fail, not by accident, but by choice. He was sentenced for a crime he didn't commit, and the person who knew the truth was the judge. This is the true story of a courtroom decision that destroyed a life, and the cover-up that followed. The crime happened late at night, on a quiet street where few people dared to walk. Shadows stretched along the walls, and the only sounds were the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a dog. When the police arrived, the scene was chaotic, filled with whispers, fear, and confusion. The victim's story was fragmented, and witnesses were terrified to speak the truth. Investigators needed a suspect quickly, someone to satisfy the public's demand for justice. They didn't look for the real criminal at first. Instead, they looked for someone who fit the story they wanted to tell. That's when his name surfaced. A man who had never been in trouble before. A man who seemed ordinary but was suddenly accused of something he didn't do. He was questioned harshly, his eyes wide with fear and disbelief. Evidence was thin, but the case moved forward anyway. And with every passing hour, the walls of his world began to close in. This was only the beginning, and the real battle for justice hadn't even started yet. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled with curious eyes and murmurs of gossip. He sat alone, the weight of accusations pressing down on him like a physical force. Lawyers argued fiercely, their voices echoing off the high ceilings, but facts seemed to matter less than appearances. Witnesses testified with shaky certainty, some hiding details, others exaggerating, all under the intense glare of the judge. Every objection was met with a sharp knock of the gavel, each one a reminder that the system was moving fast and not necessarily fairly. He tried to speak, to defend himself, but his words were drowned out by the momentum of the proceedings. Papers shuffled, pens scratched, and the jury listened intently, their expressions unreadable. Hours dragged on, the tension in the room growing heavier with every passing minute. Finally, the judge leaned forward, his face stern, and delivered a verdict that would change this man's life forever. The words echoed through the room, sealing a fate that might have been avoided had truth been valued over convenience. Outside, whispers spread like wildfire, and the man realized the battle for his freedom had only just begun. Justice, it seemed, was a fragile thing, and sometimes it could fail entirely. Behind the bench, the judge watched the courtroom with a calm expression, but inside, he knew the truth. The evidence was flawed, the witnesses uncertain, and yet his gavel had sealed a verdict that he understood was wrong. He had recognized the mistakes early, moments before the final judgment, but fear and pressure held him silent. Outside the courtroom, powerful figures whispered, demanding swift decisions, and he feared the consequences of overturning the verdict. Every time the defendant looked up at him, hope flickered in his eyes, and guilt pressed heavily against his chest. The judge reminded himself that justice was complicated, that mistakes could be forgiven, but he could not risk his career or reputation. The courtroom continued, unaware of the secret he carried, the knowledge that one innocent man's life had been shattered. Letters, appeals, and whispers of protest reached his desk, but he moved papers aside, pretending impartiality. Behind closed doors, he wrestled with his conscience, replaying every moment, every choice, every silenced voice. He understood that history might judge him, but at that moment, he chose self-preservation over truth. And so, the wrong man remained condemned, while the secret of the judge's knowledge stayed buried within the shadows of the courtroom. The verdict was already on record, but the story wasn't over. Behind closed doors, the judge began to act quietly, carefully, and deliberately. Appeals arrived on his desk, each one raising serious questions about the evidence. Instead of reopening the case, he delayed decisions, citing procedure and technicalities. Files were misplaced, hearings postponed, and deadlines pushed further into the future. Every delay bought time, and time protected reputations. Lawyers noticed the silence, but their objections were met with polite indifference. The system moved slowly by design, and the judge knew exactly how to use that against the truth. Outside the courtroom, the innocent man waited, watching months turn into years. Hope faded with every unanswered motion and every ignored request for review. What looked like bureaucracy from the outside was something far more dangerous. It was a cover-up hiding in plain sight. For years, the case sat quietly in the system, buried under paperwork and silence. Most people had moved on, believing the verdict was final and unquestionable. But not everyone accepted the official story. A defense attorney reviewing old files noticed something that didn't add up. A witness statement that had changed. A piece of evidence that was never properly examined. The deeper they looked, the clearer the pattern became. This wasn't a simple mistake. It was a decision that had been protected. Records showed delays that made no sense and rulings that avoided the core questions. Then came the discovery that changed everything. A document, long ignored, revealed that the judge had been warned about the error before sentencing. And suddenly, the silence around the case felt less like oversight and more like fear. The truth didn't come gently. It came like a fracture, splitting the case wide open. When the evidence was finally made public, the reaction was immediate and unforgiving. The judge denied wrongdoing, calling it an administrative oversight. But the documents told a different story, one of warnings ignored and justice delayed on purpose. Public trust collapsed almost overnight. Headlines spread faster than explanations ever could. The innocent man walked free, but freedom came too late to give back what was taken. Years of life were gone, erased by silence and power. No apology could undo that. No statement could repair the damage. The judge faced consequences, but not the kind the victim had lived with. The system called it accountability. The man called it survival. And the question that remains is one no courtroom has fully answered. How many truths are still buried, waiting for someone brave enough to dig them out?